What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, but now it's time to lock back in. It's time to get serious because fantasy playoffs are right around the corner now, and each week is only going to get more and more important to secure not only a fantasy playoff spot, but also a fantasy football championship for us. I have must-start players at each position, and we're going to break down why they have such a great matchup on Sunday. Let's not waste any more of your precious time. Let's go right ahead and roll the intro. Let's start with the quarterback position and the matchups I love to play this weekend. Let's start first with Jacoby Brissett, who's going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And why Jacoby Brissett must be started is because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers allow the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. So we have not only a great matchup for our quarterback, a game script that he's probably going to be trailing and they're not going to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they're going to have to throw the ball a lot in garbage time, which is where Jacoby Brissett has been thriving for us in fantasy this season. And since Jacoby Brissett took over as the starter in week 6, he's just averaging right below 21 fantasy points per game in standard format. So that means we have a guy that's basically a walking 20 points, and he's got a positive matchup. We know that they're probably not going to win this game, or maybe it is going to be competitive, but regardless, they're going to be asking Jacoby Brissett to throw the ball a lot if they want to stay in this game. So for all of those reasons, we gotta be starting Jacoby Brissett. Do not leave this guy on the waiver wire any longer. Next, I want to talk about Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos, who's going up against the Washington Commanders in what is a great matchup for Bo Nix. I understand I talk about Bo Nix a lot on this channel, but guess what? You're just going to have to get over it. The Washington Commanders allow the 3rd most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. And when doing a deeper research and dive into this, it is a small sample size. But when Bo Nix goes up against one of the 5 best matchups you could play as a quarterback in terms of fantasy points allowed at that position, Bo Nix has been absolutely amazing this season. In the 3 games that he's had a bottom 5 matchup in terms of fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position, Bo Nix is averaging right under 30 fantasy points a game in those 3 games. And I know what you're going to say. He had 40 points against the Giants, so the numbers are inflated. Even if I were to take that game away from the sample size, Bo averages 24.7 fantasy points per game in those 2 games if we're going to take out his big explosion game. So that still means Bo Nix is a baller, and Bo Nix can get the job done when the matchup is in his favor. And guess what? Washington on Sunday night is a matchup in his favor. Finally, I want to talk about Jackson Dart of the New York Giants, who's going up against the New England Patriots on Monday night. I don't want to be the guy that gives you bad betting advice, but I'm pretty confident that the Giants might win this game outright. When the New England Patriots play a dual threat quarterback or someone with rushing upside, Josh Allen had a pretty phenomenal game in doing so, and I get it. Josh Allen should not be the standard that we compare every single quarterback to that can run like a Jackson Dart. But Josh Allen led his team in rushing despite the running backs never getting going. And if we have a situation where Jackson Dart is either potentially throwing from behind or using his legs to create touchdowns, this makes Jackson Dart a must-start player against the New England Patriots. If this game goes bad for the Giants, you're going to be asking Jackson Dart to throw a lot and make a lot of plays with his legs. Or the opposite, they get up big on the New England Patriots, and it's because Jackson Dart is able to break the pocket but also deliver throws from it within. So while I don't like the New York Giants running backs in this matchup, I'm going to say that Jackson Dart will be the engine that keeps them going in terms of the rushing department, and we will see a quality game from Jackson Dart, and he should be in your lineups for that reason. Maybe you'll get a Monday Night Miracle in Week 13 that pushes your playoff odds even higher. That's the goal. Now let's talk about the running back position. I want to talk about 2 players specifically because they happen to play on the same team. They both made the video last week, but let's just go ahead and talk about Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell against the Buffalo Bills in what is a extremely fantasy-friendly matchup for the running backs. The Buffalo Bills give up the 3rd most fantasy points allowed to the running back position, and add to the fact that Kenneth Gainwell is on a heater right now. He's someone that needs to be played in fantasy football lineups. We have a player who's been playing well. Add that to the fact that this is a great matchup for him. I think both Pittsburgh Steelers running backs are startable this week, and they probably need to be put in your lineup as well. And while game script may not be in the Pittsburgh Steelers' favor, I'm not going to say they can't win this game or be leading most of the game. But even if they're not, we know that Pittsburgh is a run-first identity. This is a team that wants to run the ball. They want to limit how many times you get the ball and drive down the field. So I really like Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell this week. Next, I want to talk Kamani Vidal. I haven't seen it 100%, but there are reports that Amarian Hampton has been ruled out already. By the time this video is posted, I'm sure you, the viewer at home, will have a lot better of an idea of what's going on with that. However, for this video, I will assume that Amarian Hampton will be out this week and it's Kamani Vidal as the starter. And if that is the case, Kamani Vidal must be played this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Even though the Vegas Raiders shut down the run game last time these two teams played, the Raiders still give up the 8th most fantasy points allowed to the running back position. I would expect some sort of positive regression where instead of rushing for under 75, 80 yards as a team, that they run for at least a buck, maybe a $120. And that's going to be because they give Kamani Vidal enough opportunities to rush for that many yards and also be in a game script that allows them to run the ball with the lead in this game. I expect this game, given that the Chargers have an extra week of rest, to be a Charger bounce back game, and it's going to be led by the rushing attack of Kamani Vidal. The last running back I want to talk about, R.J. Harvey of the Denver Broncos. Rookie running backs and rookie players in general tend to see an upkick once the bye week comes, and guess what? Last week the Broncos were on a bye week. Do you see where I'm going with this? As long as Jaleel McLaughlin isn't splitting 50% of the carries with RJ Harvey like the last time we saw these two on the field, I'm very confident that RJ Harvey will have a breakout game against the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders allow the 7th most fantasy points allowed to the running back position. Add to the fact that this is a player who catches passes out of the backfield, so that's great for us that play in a PPR or even half PPR format. RJ Harvey must be played, and dare I even say a top 20 running back play. Next, let's talk about the wide receiver position. I want to talk specifically about Michael Wilson, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals, and before I explain why we should be playing him, let me start by saying that I do not care that Marvin Harrison Jr. is back. So don't rush to the comments to tell me that, because I'm not hearing it. Over the last however many games, Michael Wilson and Jacoby Brissett clearly have established some sort of rapport and connection with one another. I obviously understand that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a more talented wide receiver than Michael Wilson. However, you can't tell me that he's still not going to get around 7 targets in this game with a chance of falling in the end zone. We talked about how Tampa Bay is a great matchup for the fantasy football quarterback position. It's also great for the wide receivers as well. It doesn't really faze me too much that Marvin Harrison Jr. is on his way back in this game. I still like Michael Wilson as a must-start player. Next, I want to talk Troy Franklin, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos. And it's not to say that Courtland Sutton isn't a must-start player, but let's just face the facts. Troy Franklin lately has been the more targeted receiver. He's seen the end zone more. He's been better of a fantasy player, and if you gave me an option of playing one of the two, Troy Franklin or Courtland Sutton, I get to pick, I'm picking Troy Franklin easily. Troy Franklin was obviously someone, if you watched the videos all summer, someone that I was banging the drum for, and I even said that we need to make sure we add this player right as week 2 started, so that was a great call by me. And the icing on the cake would be that the Washington Commanders allow the 4th most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So if you have either one of these Broncos receivers, definitely play them, but be even more excited about the idea of having Troy Franklin in your lineup. Finally, the last wide receiver, another flex play material kind of guy, Khalil Shakir against the Pittsburgh Steelers is a must-start play. The Pittsburgh Steelers allow the 2nd most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. We all remember how it went last week for DJ Moore. He went absolutely bonkers. There is a strong potential and chance here that one of these Buffalo Bills goes for a crazy game on the receiving end. The options to pick from are kind of slim. You can play Gabe Davis, sure, but I don't feel great about that. I know Khalil Shakir has been catching passes and running backwards and barely at the line of scrimmage, but trust me, this is the Khalil Shakir explosion game. It's also possible that the Bills are trailing from behind at points in this game because, like we mentioned before, the Pittsburgh Steelers like to run the ball a lot, limit the time of possession for the other team. Hence, Khalil Shakir in a negative game script, must-start player. And last but not least, we have to cover the tight end position. Talking about Juwan Johnson of the New Orleans Saints, who's going up against the Miami Dolphins, who give up the 2nd most fantasy points allowed to the tight end position this year. I understand the QB play of the New Orleans Saints has been shaky. Juwan Johnson had his lows. He's also had his highs. And right now, he's starting to play again like we saw in the beginning of the season. So that's another assuring sign that we should be playing Juwan Johnson. But also, they're going to be trailing in this game. They're going to have to throw a lot. Hence, Here comes Juwan Johnson, probably their second best vertical threat now that Rashid Shaheed is not there anymore. I like playing Juwan Johnson this week. I think this is a great matchup. If you have him, lock him in your lineups and set it and forget it. Next, I want to talk about Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans. Davis Mills gave him quite the upgrade versus CJ Stroud, and it just hasn't been clicking yet with him. The Indianapolis Colts give up the 6th most fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. Probably going to be a game that they're trailing in because the Colts need a bounce back game after their collapse last week. I like all of these chances to make Dalton Schultz a quality starting tight end this week, and we should be rolling him out as such. And last but not least, and if you at home have any fantasy football start-sit questions, make sure you comment them down below. I will make sure I get to each and every one of you before Sunday kickoff. I love to go matchup by matchup and break down each position, but those videos are just too long, and I know you guys don't want to stick around for a 20-minute video every week, so I try to keep this one short. Again, if you have any fantasy football start-sit questions, fire them down in the comments. I'll try to get back to them as soon as possible. But thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Smash the like button so I know to keep making fantasy football content just like this one. And if you're new here, you're new to the channel, this is your first time watching me, thank you so much. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing and would mean the absolute world to me. That's all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Turtle. This is Outlier Fantasy, and I will see you in the next video. Wow, you stuck to the end of this video? Thank you so much. If you're new here, make sure you check out one of these videos on the screen right now. And don't forget, before you leave, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any fantasy football videos on this channel. And that's all I got for you guys. I'll see you in the next one.